Grace, mercy, peace. It should never fail to amaze us that those things are ours because God has chosen to give them to people like you and me. May our Good Shepherd's grace and peace wash over us anew and afresh this morning as we consider our Old Testament lesson. And just to give you a heads up, I'm going to handle this a little differently. You see, Good Shepherd Sunday is a Sunday in which we rightly focus our attention on some of the really cool shepherd images that are found in the scriptures. I am the good shepherd. I lay down my life for the sheep. Isaiah talks about how God will tend his sheep gently like a shepherd. There's all kinds of images which picture God as this loving, guiding, wonderful, good shepherd blessing us. And so generally, the feel of Good Shepherd Sunday is this gentle, encouraging, build up, kind of soft kind of a feel. And that's great. But the sermon text in front of us is a battle. And it's not just any battle, it's the battle between David and Goliath, and then eventually between the Israelites and the Philistines. And so what I want to do to understand the text, we really need to understand it in the full context of the battle. And so I want to talk through the battle quickly, and then we'll read the text and make some brief applications from it, okay? So, the Philistines had come and attacked, or had struck war against the Israelites, and the Israelites are set up on one side of a valley, and the Philistines are set up on another side of the valley. And each day, Goliath would come out. Now, Goliath was a Philistine who was just huge, probably about 9 feet tall. I'm not sure what it is that causes that kind of huge growth, but that does happen on occasion. But he's just this huge giant of a man. And he would come out to the Israelites and he'd challenge them. Send one man out to fight me. And if your guy beats me, then we Philistines will serve you. But if I beat him, then you Israelites will serve us Philistines. Well, you can imagine. The Israelites look at this 9-foot giant, and all the Israelite soldiers are going, I can't take that on. Well, David was still somewhere in his teens. We don't know exactly how old he was, but he was a teenager. His oldest 3 brothers had joined Saul's army, and so they were off at the battle. David was still back at home tending to the sheep. But David's dad said to David, okay, I want you to take some food to your brothers. I want you to find out how the battle is going. Take these extra bits of food to the commander so that the commander is well fed, and then come back and give me a report. So David heads down to the battlefront, and when he gets there just in time to hear Goliath come out and give his challenge. And included in Goliath's challenge is Goliath blaspheming God and talking about how God is nothing and worthless, etc., etc. And so David starts asking around, just going, so what would happen if one of us went out there to fight him? What would be done for that man? And the reality was, if one of the Israelite soldiers went out and fought against Goliath and won, Saul was planning to give him his own daughter in marriage. Saul was planning to exempt that man's family from taxes, which is a huge deal, obviously. Well, David's brothers hear him asking these questions. They get mad at him. They think he's being an arrogant little snot. And so they tell him basically to shut up and go back to tending the sheep. But David, undeterred, kind of keeps asking around. I guess he wants to find out if the story he's heard is accurate and just make sure. And eventually word gets back to Saul that this shepherd boy is asking questions. And so Saul calls for David, and David comes on into him. Well, Saul looks at David and says to him, are you kidding? Goliath's this giant warrior, and he's been a warrior since his youth. You're just a boy. You can't go fight him. And it's at that point that our text takes place. And we read David say this, But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." Well, it's hard to quite know what's going on in Saul's mind. But Saul decides that it's an okay thing for him to go ahead and send David off to fight this giant Goliath. Saul is clearly not living up to his responsibilities as king. He tries to put his own armor on David, and it's way too big. It doesn't fit. So David says, I can't do that. I can't go to fight this guy all encumbered like that. I can't do it. And so instead, David goes off to fight the giant Goliath with a sling. Now, a sling was a piece of leather probably about 5 to 6 feet long. And what they would do is they would take and they would put a stone into that sling. They'd fold that sling in half, put the stone into the sling, and then release one part of the sling at the right time, and the stone would go flying out. He chose 5 smooth stones from a brook. Now, when I was growing up, I had the picture that it was like these, little tiny skipping stones like you'd skip on a lake or something. No, instead, you should picture this. Last year on our archaeological dig, one of the pastors on the dig actually found this stone. And this is the kind of stone that they are fairly convinced that this is the kind of stone that the slingers used. So we're thinking the size of a racquetball or the size of a tennis ball. So you can imagine you taking that sling, which is a couple feet long, you're whipping it around, you let go at the right moment. That is a missile, which could do some serious damage. And so off David goes. And as he approaches the giant Goliath, Goliath says to him, "What? Am I a dog that you're going to come out and beat me with a stick?" He thinks David is just this idiotic little shepherd boy and he's going to crunch him. And David makes this wonderful confession of faith. David says, "Yeah, you come at me with a sword and a spear, but I come at you in the name of the Lord. The Lord is going to give me the victory this day, and then all people will know that God is God." And so Goliath's mad. David quickly grabs a stone out of his pouch, sticks it into his sling, runs towards Goliath, fires that stone. We're told that the stone hit Goliath on the head and sank into his forehead. Ouch. Down Goliath went. David runs over him, grabs his sword, cuts off Goliath's head. Yeah, this is pretty gruesome stuff. As you can imagine, the Philistines were completely deflated. Their champion was dead. And by contrast, the Israelites are going, "Yes, we did it. David did it." And so the Israelites rise up and they attack the Philistines with everything they got. And there ends up being this absolutely huge victory for the Israelites that day, started by David defeating Goliath. And yet I would imagine the thought remains in your head, okay, I get all that. But why in the world would we be talking about this on Good Shepherd Sunday? Let's first go back to David taking care of his sheep. Those sheep were in danger. Here came the lion, here came the bear, and the sheep were basically helpless. What did they need? They needed a good shepherd who could fight their battles for them. Lord knows the sheep couldn't do it. And that same picture follows through and becomes even far stronger when we consider the battle scene in front of us. It's not just sheep who were in danger, the people of God were in danger. The Philistines were on the attack, and God's people were in peril. What did they need? They needed a good shepherd who could step into the battle for them and fight the battle that they couldn't fight. And in that sense, David becomes this wonderful picture of Jesus, our good shepherd. Because what did Jesus, our good shepherd, do for you and me? He went out and battled. Make no mistake, brothers and sisters, when the Bible talks about us being sheep, it is not giving us a compliment. It is saying that we are foolish, that we are dumb, that we don't know what's coming tomorrow, that we're blind. And oh my, do we have enemies. The Bible describes the devil himself as a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. The world loves to take and suck us in and lead us into sexual immorality or greed or anger or violence or selfishness or fear or anxiety. And our own sinful flesh loves the world and loves the devil. And our own sinful flesh would like to do nothing more than to go chase after the sins of the world and to chase after the devil's temptations. And if that weren't enough, continuing to use sheep imagery and shepherd imagery, Jesus talks about false teachers. He describes them as wolves in sheep's clothing. And that false teachers will come not so much from outside the flock, but they'll rise up inside of the church. And they'll look like they're one of us. But they'll try to convince us that we don't need to believe something that God does say, or that we should believe something that God doesn't say. And often it may even come from someone who is well-meaning, kind, gentle, personable. And yet those false teachings have the opportunity to drag us down to hell. Make no mistake, my brothers and sisters, there is a battle going on. And it's not against COVID-19 or a recession or whatever. Those things are important. We need to focus on them, sure. But the real battle that's going on is the battle for your soul. And the devil, the world, and your own sinful flesh want to defeat you, and you and I are helpless sheep if left on our own. And oh, what do we need? Oh, we need a good shepherd. Oh, we need a good shepherd who can defeat the devil. And Jesus did. Away from me, Satan, for it is written, Jesus said. And oh, how we needed a good shepherd who could defeat the world. And Jesus walked away from every one of the world's temptations. And oh, how we needed a shepherd who could unmask the false teachers and their false teachings. And you heard Jesus do exactly that in our gospel reading for today. And oh, how we needed a good shepherd who could guide and direct us. And in Jesus, my brothers and sisters, you have that good shepherd. His rod and his staff, they comfort you. Why? Because he's going to use his rod and his staff to beat away the lions and the bears of the devil, the world, and our own sinful flesh. And yes, he has the ability to defeat the Goliaths in our life, those physical problems or spiritual problems, which just seem too big to be overcome. He's your almighty shepherd who can and will defeat every enemy that you have. Oh, he's going to do that at his own time. And he's going to do that in his own way, in the way that he knows best. And you know what? That's okay. Because we're the sheep. He's the good shepherd. And so on this Good Shepherd Sunday, my brothers and sisters, rejoice. Rejoice that your good shepherd is a fighter. Rejoice that he has battled against the devil, the world, against false teachers and false teachings. Rejoice that he has battled to bring you into his sheepfold. And as he is battling for you now, so he will battle for you tomorrow and the day after and the day after that, until that glorious day when the battle ends. And Jesus takes us to our eternal home, where we will see the Lamb who won the ultimate battle by dying on the cross and rising again. We will see that victorious Lamb with our own eyes. And oh, with joy, we will confess, the Lord is my shepherd. Amen. Amen.